At 7 on AM 560, The Answer.
Coming up next, it's me, Mike Gallagher, right after Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy on AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. And Amy, you would like to offer thank you. Your birthday celebration continues. We're almost midweek, and it's still ongoing.
Yes, Lynn Neiman. Lynn Neiman provided birthday breakfast this morning for all of us. So it was a gift that keeps on giving for all of you.
Yes.
And she decorated the studio. So thank you so much, Lynn. And nobody took it down today. Keith.
Yeah, that's great. So we got breakfast, and then this is after we open the week with the exciting news of special birthday wishes from you in video form, from Anthony Scaramucci. And he is the managing partner of Skybridge Capital, a global alternative investments firm. You'll recall he served as a White House comm director.
Yeah, for 10 days. It was a glorious 10 days from July 21st through July 31st.
No, I don't know if is that supposed to be sarcasm? This is somebody who just wished you happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Amy Jacobson. Woo! 50 years old.
How excited he is.
40.
Pretty amazing. Dan, your co-hosts, Justin and Quinn, your producers are giving you the shout out. Now, I understand you're the co-host of Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560.
Like you don't listen.
The Answer. Now, listen, I know you mispronounce names all the time on the air.
He does listen.
And I should really be messing up your name, but I'm wondering maybe you'll invite me on the show and then you can mispronounce my name. But 11/11 on Veterans Day, the big 5-0 for Amy Jacobson.
40.
Happy birthday, and the Mooch family wishes you many more.
Oh.
So
and that was really the most unique creative gift I've ever received.
Although a little gauche to mention your age, I thought.
Well, he got the age wrong.
Of course,
I mean,
even
it's
more,
40,
even more
not
unseemly.
50.
All right, so we took Mr. Scaramucci up on his offer, the mooch, and invited him on the show to talk about Amy Jacobson's birthday, maybe a few other matters too.
Well, good morning, guys. First of all, Amy, you're botching people's last names, but my time in the White House was 11 days.
11 days.
Oh.
You got to count the days.
Fake news.
Don't jip me at a 9.1% of my federal career. You know, it hurts my feelings.
Sure.
But have very happy birthday to you.
Thank
you. That got booked on Cameo, and all the proceeds of my cameos go to the Brain Tumor Foundation.
Oh.
So they're a lot of fun for me to do, and and I wish you a great birthday and many more.
I like the charity you chose.
Yeah,
that's dear to our hearts.
Very nice. And you had the shortest career as White House communications director since that Pope who got poisoned. I thought you would appreciate a Wall Street reference. Yeah. All right.
It was a brutal run, 954,000 seconds if you were counting the seconds. But look, it is what it is. It was a great learning experience for me. And I returned back to my firm. One of the good things about owning your own firm, after you've blown to pieces in Washington, you can just go back to your desk at your own firm and start right up again.
Yeah, you could rehire yourself.
Yeah, exactly. A big learning lesson, but life moves on, and I think it's a big lesson for young people. I made a mistake in the White House that got me fired. I always tell young people, be accountable for that mistake. Don't pretend it didn't happen, and don't cast blame on others. Own the mistake, but then the flip side is you got to forgive yourself and move on. So that's what I've done.
Refresh our memory. What was the
mistake? And here we are now.
The mistake was being friends with Ryan Lizza, apparently.
Yeah, well, I trusted a reporter. I mean, go back and listen to what I said to him. It was an offhanded remark that I thought I was making to a friend. His father had worked with my dad in the construction industry here on Long Island for 50 years, and I unfortunately misplaced my trust, and I transposed their relationship onto mine and his, and that was my mistake. And so he got some salacious tidbit from me that I would have said at a bar to a close friend, jokingly. And, of course, he mischaracterized it. But if you actually listen to the recording, I'm joking with him, and, he strained that out of his article. But c'est la vie. It is what it is, and we move on. But truth of the matter is, in a lot of ways, it was a great learning lesson for me, and you got to be resilient in life, and that's what it's all about.
What was the interest in sort of political communications coming out of the investment world in the first place?
Well, no interest whatsoever. So what happened to me is none of us thought President Trump was going to win on election night. he did win. He turned to several of us and said, "I want you to come work with us." My original response to that was no. I have my own business. I was hosting Wall Street Week for Fox Business on the Fox Business Network. There was, I frankly was enjoying my life. I didn't need that hassle. But then I got what's called Potomac fever, which is, here's the president-elect of the United States, asking you to help him. I've lived a good part of the American dream. I grew up in a blue-collar family, and so I said, you know what? I'll help him. And the original job was to be his chief networking officer, which was effectively the Office of Public Liaison. But Reince Priebus, the first chief of staff, really didn't want me in that job. And unfortunately, I didn't understand the passive-aggressive codes in Washington. And so if he had just come to me like a Wall Street guy and said, hey, look, man, I hate your guts. I don't want you in the job, I would say, okay, no problem. But he did all of these, backstabbing shenanigans. And so I wasn't reading the tea leaves well enough. And then I told the president, hey, this guy's a bad guy. When it's time to remove him, give me a call. And that was a severe egocentric mistake on my part. And so another thing I tell younger people, don't put your pride and ego into things. You make mistakes. And so that's what happened. And but he got blown out of the White House. So did Steve Bannon, and I went out with him.
And how did the relationship between you and President Trump evolve during the campaign and in the early days of his administration, and then devolve to now where you're a fairly vociferous critic of his?
Well, listen, it's not even personal. I mean, you just have to look at it. To me, it's a hiring decision. I had worked with Jeb Bush. I'm pretty much a moderate Republican, probably a little left-leaning on social issues, right of center on business, and pretty much a practical person. I was working with Jeb. Mr. Trump asked me to switch over to him when Jeb came out of the race. I thought that was a good thing to do. I decided to do it. Get along with him. Again, nothing personal to him, but this is me speaking as an entrepreneur. You go to hire somebody for a job. You're looking at their qualifications. Unfortunately, in the case of the presidency, you only have two people to choose from, and I'm a Republican, and so I went with Mr. Trump, chose him for the job, like many other people did, 62.8 million people, and now it's 3 years into the job, and you're assessing the job that's being done, and I think he's actually doing a disastrous job. I mean, we can talk about the economy in a second if you want, because he's taking credit for that. That's primarily born from the interest rate cycle, and it's primarily born from American industry and American entrepreneurship. But his content and his style is actually detonating the United States, and it's charging us racially. And the first name of the country is United, and he's dividing the country. But then when you go into the lawless behavior, it's more questionable. So for me, it was a gradual thing. I wanted to support him after I got fired. Not a big deal that I got fired. But when you're disavowing the intelligence agencies, calling the press the enemy of the people, telling 4 congresswomen, 3 of which were born in the United States, to go back to the countries they originally came from, those are racist, nativist tropes from 150 years ago. They told my Italian grandmother to do that. She produced 2 World War II veterans, one who was wounded on Normandy Beach, and obviously my mom. And so I don't like it, and I'm not going to disavow my personal history or my personal integrity to support somebody that's doing that. And so when he went to attack me, that's fine. Then he thought it was a good idea to attack my wife. I mean, I think that's boundaryless. I'm not Ted Cruz. I'm not a politician. I don't think you should be attacking civilians. And so here we are now. But just look at what he did. At the end of the day, he's attacking an American citizen from the position of the American presidency by asking a foreign leader's help in the attack of that American citizen, Joe Biden.
Yeah.
And so, we can twist it any way we want, okay? And people will do that are partisan. That's fine, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to tell people what I really think.
Well, let's. I mean, there's a lot there. Why don't we start with the dividing the country? Does the identitarians of the left, all of the candidates on the left for President of the United States, as well as all of the leftists in control of the cultural and civic institutions in this country, who obsess about identity politics, who poison college campuses, who have invented things like intersectionality. Do you think that focusing on everybody's identity, their race, their gender, their religion, their heritage, and coming up with a score, do you think that in any way has to do with why our nation is less united than it could be? irrespective of President Trump.
Okay, and I'm going to agree with every single point that you just made, but you're doing something that Joseph Stalin refined in the early stages of Russian communism. Yeah, it's called whataboutism.
Yeah.
And so when somebody said, well, look at this bread line here in communist China, the Joseph Stalin propagandist said, well, what about the racial divide in the United States? Black people can't play baseball, or African Americans can't play baseball in the United States. So you're doing something called whataboutism. It's totally fine. You can do that.
No, I'm actually not doing whataboutism. I'm actually not doing whataboutism.
No, but I'll see that let's get the gun back on the bird of Donald Trump, President Trump.
No, we're talking.
So you're telling me I agree with you on every one of your points. Do you agree with me on any of mine?
Yeah,
every one of your points I cede to you and agree with.
Well,
but let's focus on Donald Trump for a second.
No,
and not the left. We've got a problem on the left too that has to be fixed. I totally agree with that. I don't like that. I'm by and large a libertarian, and I don't need people to tell me what my identity is or what other people's identities are and how I should speak to people. I don't believe in all that political correct nonsense. So you and I are in 100% agreement in everything you just said, but let's go back to Donald Trump. You agree with him?
Cool. Can I answer the question now? So one is, it's not whataboutism. The question is, why is our country not united or not as united as we could be, particularly across racial, ethnic, religious lines? And so I'm giving a diagnosis that precedes Trump and could include Trump, but it's a diagnosis. It's not whataboutism. I think the Stalinist comparison is a little over the top, but okay. With respect to some of the things President Trump has said, and I've been critical of him on this show. I don't like that he punches down with respect to private citizens. I don't like some of the ways he's engaged his political opponents. So I will concede those points. But I think to ascribe the division in the nation to a single individual, even the President of the United States, is to ignore 50 years of running up to this point and presenting a landscape where President Trump could be a President Trump.
We may be talking over each other because I'm not ascribing the entire debacle to him, but he is the one person, unfortunately, that all of us get to vote on. If you look at the way they set up the construction of the documents and the Republican representative democracy, there's only one person that all eligible voters get to vote on, and that's the American president. And so a lot of times what you would hope in the office of the presidency, and we can be critical of many presidents of this, not just President Trump, you would want them to try to appeal to everybody to the best of their capability as opposed to sticking into one zone of tribalism. So I agree with you. It's not his problem. He didn't start it 50 years ago or 75 years ago. He didn't break up the media situation and create all these tribal zones where people go into their confirmed biases and listen to each other in an echo chamber. I totally agree with you on that. But as the leader of the United States and the representative or the proverbial leader of the free world, I think it's incumbent upon somebody in that position, okay, to recognize that the first name of the country is united. And they could be taking positions as a leader and someone that controls the bully pulpit to try to heal the nation more than what's going on right now.
Let me jump to another category here of discussion, and you mentioned his reference to certain media outlets being the enemy of the people. What did you think about the Beltway media before you got into this arena and had your stint as comm director, and what do you think about it now?
I think the Beltway media has been unfair to the president. I think if you look at the Pew Research surveys, don't go by me, just go by objective standards, I think they've been unfair to the president. And so I think the Beltway media is tilted to the left. I think the Harvard study said it was 91% tilted to the left. And so I'm not a huge fan of that. But what I am a fan of is our First Amendment. And what I am a fan of is the recognition of whatever they're saying or whatever they're doing, they have a right to say it. And remember, one of the reasons why they put that in place was to hold people in power accountable. And, because people in power, they go crazy. I mean, I got to see it over an 11-day period of time and watching it unfold right now. But the second and most important thing, and I think your listeners would appreciate this, when you teach your second graders to speak and think freely, they go on and create Facebook and Google and Apple Computer. And the First Amendment allows for that zone of creativity. In communist China, 2/3 of the internet is censored. You can't say anything about the leadership there. If you say something about President Xi, It puts you in a rejuvenation camp for 6 to 12 months as a young child. So to me, I think it's very, very important that we hold that sacred. But if you're asking me to evaluate the Beltway media, I think they're extremely biased. I think they're very, very slanted, and I think they've been unfair to the president. But the president is a very effective communicator, and he could have done things stylistically to parry that and to rebut it. You could go on Google. CNN published my comms plan before I was fired. I put a 9-page plan together, but the summary is what they published. And the president, very effective communicator, controlling the bully pulpit. He could have beat that back in a way stylistically that would have been more healing than where we are right now.
And
but yeah, no question, they're very left leaning and very biased.
So I take it, are you looking forward to the impeachment hearings, which are just one day away?
No, I'm actually not looking forward to it. I think it's a travesty that we're in a situation where this will be the third time in American history that a president's impeached due to lawless behavior. And so I think it's a tragedy for the country. But it'll be very interesting to see what happens when all of this information is in the public domain, and these great civil servants and these public servants, somebody like Bill Taylor, who's politically agnostic, has served the nation since he graduated from West Point. When people hear his open testimony on public television, it'll be very interesting to see where people line up on the side of the Republicans, because you're going to have a moment here where you're going to have to look into yourself, and you have to figure out if you are a partisan or a patriot. And it'll be very interesting to see what happens here as this unfolds. But no, I'm saddened by it.
Well, I mean, Bill Taylor, it'll be interesting. You're right. I mean, Bill Taylor, among others, and I'll take everything Bill Taylor said as at his word, including the fact that he never spoke to the president. So it's going to be very interesting if you read the transcripts of Vindman's testimony and Taylor's testimony, which I have. It will be very interesting and very illuminating, and I think it's going to be a very difficult case for the Democrats to make out that this moves anywhere other than to a quick dismissal in the Senate or acquittal in the Senate. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'm glad it's coming out. We can agree definitely that
unless there's more facts that are evolved.
True.
There's more facts.
But I mean, we can definitely agree that this should be in public. That all of this should be public, and the American people should have access to all this information, and people need to be held to account publicly and questioned publicly, so people can make their own assessments in terms of support for this or not. When you're talking about removing a president from office.
Hey, listen, you and I both agree on that, but I think that the investigatory process, unfortunately, is never public, but it's going to be public now. And the Republicans asked for a vote on the impeachment inquiry; they got that, and so let's see what happens. But I could be right about this or wrong. We'll have to see how this unfolds. But it's likely, given the president's personality and given the fact that there's 193 nations in the UN, and there's been 3 years of the presidency, or 29 or 30 months of the presidency. It's very likely that there was more than one call like that. And so we'll have to see how this thing unfolds. But it sounds like you and I are on opposite sides of this. But let's see where the American people are. The truth of the matter is none of us, nor President Trump should be held above the standard of the law. So if he broke the law, it'll be very interesting to see what the Republicans decide to do.
He is Anthony Scaramucci, managing partner of Skybridge Capital, global alternative investments firm, and, of course, served a stint as White House comm director and made Amy's birthday.
Yes, you did.
With your video birthday wishes.
Amy, happy birthday. I'm telling people I'm 35, Amy, so you can stick with 40. Totally fine.
That's right. The one acceptable thing to lie about. All right. Anthony Scaramucci, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
All right. Be well.
Thanks, you too.